Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Founder Files. Today, I have had one of the most stimulating conversations I've had with someone in a while, because if you've been listening to a bunch of these podcasts, you know I like to get quite strategic, macro, philosophical in my conversation. Definitely managed to achieve that today with Mark Collie. So Mark, he is the co-founder of Airvantage. He's no longer the CEO, because this is one of the topics we get into, is that after getting through the scale-up journey, appointed a CEO to take over it so that him and his co-founder can start another business and product within that group of companies. So that's one of the topics we get into is how is it that they navigated that journey and shift. We start speaking to what they're able to unlock with alternative credit scoring with mobile network operators and their consumers, and how he's viewing this kind of trickle effect in terms of digital and financial inclusion, and how that he's applying this to everyone, including school teachers, which is also something he's got an NGO in as well. So we have so much conversation just on macro level, viewing Africa and South Africa as a society, what's really needed in the space. So if you want ideation as a founder, this is definitely a good podcast for you. We also then get super practical down to how they manage their execution in terms of like weekly exco meetings, weekly management meetings, how those are run. We talk about the culture and how they're able to run such an amazing culture in such a lean business of 53 people doing 250 million transactions a month, and still have a culture where they have almost no employee turnover whatsoever. And as always, much, much more. We talk about organizational design, we talk about strategy, we talk about execution management. It's a podcast that is very fast paced. It was really enjoyable for me to get into and really put me to the test. So I hope you enjoy it too. And if you are not following the podcast, if you're not following the Founder Files, please do so now. It's your best way to make sure that you don't miss any other episodes like this. This is the best way to support us and to make me feel happy. But ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Mark Collie from Airvantage. Welcome to the Founder Files, the podcast that's like eavesdropping on a conversation with a successful entrepreneur over a fireside chat. Join me, Cameron Coots, through this unique experience of unfiltered stories and insights from scaling founders around the globe as they share their ups, downs, and everything in between. Mark, welcome to the Founder Files. As someone who is the director of 8 companies, you were the CEO of one, now you're no longer the CEO of it, you're still the CEO of another one. There's just lots of experience that you have as an entrepreneur, as a leader of business. So besides what we're going to focus on in Airvantage, I can't wait to share some of your insights and wisdom with our audience. So thank you for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to have a discussion.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So I guess first and foremost, of those 8 businesses that I mentioned, if someone wants to find out more of them, you can obviously check out your LinkedIn profile. But right now we're going to be focusing on Airvantage. So just talk to me about Airvantage, what it is as a business, what it is as a business model.
So Airvantage is a company. We work with mobile operators to profile their customer base, to understand the creditworthiness of their customers and extend credit to those customers in the form of airtime, data, and mobile money and handsets. And we operate in South Africa, South America, Asia. And it's been an incredible journey in terms of building out a great team that we do incredible work.
Yeah, that was one of the most succinct explanations of one's business to date. Just to unpack, because I've obviously done a bit of research and the audience might not have. Originally, the business started off as just airtime advances, right? So the understanding is like the average consumer in emerging markets, they obviously want to keep utilizing airtime. They want to keep using data either for content consumption, obviously communication, etc. But then their data runs out, but can't really pay for it right now. Need an advance. It's essentially a loan, but for airtime. Is that correct?
That's correct. And actually, a lot of these markets where there's no penetration of banking and there's limited, say, retail outlets in terms of recharging their device, they actually don't have any options. The only option they have is to get into a vehicle, drive to a store, and then actually recharge their phone if the store is open. So, the actual costs involved in doing that whole process and inconvenience is far more expensive than actual just, dialing a USSD string. We've actually pre-profiled the entire customer base, and we understand what that customer is worth in terms of how much airtime we can advance that customer. So it's a real-time scoring process that gets real-time access. And then the next recharge at their convenience, we take back the amount that they loaned him plus a small transaction fee that's just much lower than what it cost them to actually top up elsewhere.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And you partner directly with MNOs. So obviously the value proposition is to the consumer is to be able to access airtime when you want it, when you need it, without the cost of having to mission to go get it. What's the value prop to the to the operator? I'm so assuming just more revenue.
Yeah, it's a very clear value prop. So the actual operator is a lost call opportunity. So obviously the customer who would have liked to make a phone call or use data or send an SMS didn't actually have the ability to do it. And they actually would have, I'm sure, not made that phone call, made that data usage. So at that point, we're increasing the mobile operators ARPU. So customers who would have generally not generated revenue, we're helping to increase the ARPU of that customer. Plus, because there's a small margin we charge taking on top, we're actually sharing the majority of that with the operator. So from the operator, it's a total win-win basis where they have a higher ARPU and higher margin on a customer. So from our side, we have to.
I know it's an acronym.
Average revenue per user. So what you see is the average revenue per user go up because they have the ability to access credit. And with operators, operator doesn't. They struggle on their postpaid in terms of, if you look at how many people they disqualify for postpaid, they're actually not great in terms of extending credit to their customers. So we focus on understanding how to extend credit to those customers, understand those customers and how to extend credit to those customers.
Yeah. And so just obviously understanding them, you mentioned pre-profiling. Like, how do you go about doing that? How do you understand the customer? Because obviously the risk involved is like you can unlock in advance as much as you like, but like there's obviously the risk of default in that situation. How do you pre-profile? How do you manage the risk?
So what we do is we ingest the mobile operators' customer data records. So they have live feeds in terms of those customers, how often they recharge, how often they make phone calls, how much data they use, how many SMSs they send, the frequency, the duration. And we ingest it into machine learning algorithms, and then we profile the entire customer base on the back of that. And then and then from that perspective, we also identify how easy it is to swap out a SIM card. If you've got a phone and you're receiving lots of phone calls on that phone, you'll generally value that SIM card. And then we extend airtime on the back of that. I'm sorry, what was your second question on that? You had two-part question.
Oh, it was how you manage the risk.
Oh, we manage risk. So we take the full risk. That's our value proposition. And we don't just actually, we can start off a smaller amount and slowly increase into larger amounts. So we're actually blending the customer data record with the actual experience of the customer in terms of what their history is like. So from that perspective, we can start with small amounts, and customers will throw SIM cards away and we will lose money. But generally, we've actually built a unique way to credit profile those customers and to blend the history of that customer to make sure that we keep our bad debt to an absolute minimum.
Nice. It's a great concept, and that's obviously the core of the business. And the scale that you're at is super impressive, especially compared to the team that you have. So, do you mind sharing those digits with the audience and with me?
Yeah, it's a very high volume business, and we very much we're doing almost 250 million transactions a month. That's not just the loans, also the repayments in terms of recovering the amounts that are owed. And the numbers are significant because you're talking with mobile operators with customer bases of 60 million customers using a service, and that's in, say, one market. So it's a high volume business. It's 24/7. It runs all the time, and we're doing tens of thousands of transactions every minute. And the scaling, really, all our core infrastructure. We do have a small team that's doing it because we actually custom built all our core infrastructure. So it's really high frequency, low latency infrastructure, and built from the ground up. It's been it's not so easy to replicate.
Yeah, no, 100%. You've still got a team of like 53 people, and it's just even there, you've got amazing technology, but it's just the scope of managing that many transactions per month across that many geographies with that many MNOs, handling that many APIs. It's a lot, and to have a team that you have like that is, I think, really an impressive feat.
I think we've got an exceptional team. I think what's amazing about our team, and it's maybe what area I'm but weak, is that they're very focused on making sure everything is automated completely to the T. So we're only really managing the exceptions. Everything, we avoid doing anything manually. Making sure we reconcile every single day. If there's any exceptions, we investigate the reconciliations to make sure we balance it. So we've, that's one that we really pride ourselves in, is that our systems are up, I'm sure, with the highest availability, and we have hardly any reconciliation errors with our customers. So come month end, when we start swapping invoices, there's hardly ever a time where there's actually an invoice we need to go check back in, because we always reconcile exactly. And I think with that type of volume of transactions, is if you make the mistake and don't invest in the reconciliation and automation, then you actually can't scale. So we've invested significantly in that, and we're also constantly upgrading and constantly improving all our processes to make sure that we are able to scale more efficiently.
So I'm curious to know about your uptime, about the fact that this is going to be an issue with anyone handling volumes of transactions, specifically automated. You pride yourself on the fact that this is well, it's really high, right? One, compared to what, and two, how did you get it there?
So I think it's really high in terms of the industry standard. I mean, we are like over uptime over 99.89%. So it's we very high frequency. I think what's important is we've put all these monitors in place. So we have a lot of real-time monitors in all of our systems. We actually work with a company listed on the NASDAQ called Datadog, which does real-time machine learning monitoring on all your capacities. So the moment there's any downtime in any of our platforms, not even ours, our customers, we're actually monitoring all of our customers' interfaces. And we're often picking up issues on our customers' interfaces before they do. So if we see a drop in terms of number of transactions, we immediately get flagged immediately. We have outbound messages, outbound dialers to our support team. They'll go in and check what's actually going on, and we'll then notify the operator. Actually, we've noticed your USSD gateway is down before they even notice it. So when we say availability, I mean if a service isn't available, normally the one thing that's amazing about this service is that a lot of services get complaints about the service itself. But what we've seen is the complaints really come when the service isn't available. If the service is down for 5 or 10 minutes, the call centers actually get a bit overwhelmed. Like customers aren't able to access airtime, and so it's quite refreshing to see that how much in demand this product is, that we can almost notify the operator you've got a USSD gateway down. The customers aren't able to reach the service before they actually start seeing the call center, the numbers coming in, and actually start raising flags on their end.
Yeah, I mean that's like VC startup world absolute gold, is the fact that it's like if you've got a product that your customers are absolutely blowing up the customer service hotline when it goes down, then you know that you've nailed your product.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's and I think it's just about, we've been meticulous in terms of trying to identify every single time we identify an issue. We actually don't just look at the issue and fix it. We actually sit down and we investigate actually what happened, how we can fix it better, what do we need to do. We do a whole root cause analysis to make sure it doesn't happen again, and put all the processes in place that if it does happen again, we can respond quickly and resolve it.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds like you run a seriously tight ship over there at Airvantage.
On the tight ship side, I'd actually most probably, I wouldn't say I'm the best at the tight ship. It's actually the team we've hired to run the tight ship. We've got an incredible CEO, incredible CTO, incredible COO, and they really run a tight ship to the point where I often get wrapped over the knuckles for not being, or not running things as tightly as I should.
Well, I feel like that's typical of being an entrepreneur. And also, just spoiler alert there to the audience on the topics we're going to get into, is the fact that Mark is the founder of this business, was the CEO, isn't the CEO any longer. So we're definitely going to get into that story. But I think just the point there is, it's like the personality of a founder is, how can I break things, solve problems, make them happen like really quickly and innovate. But then to have a business that is so reliant on automation, very low margin for error, extreme predictability and repeatability of what's going on. That is, the innovation of that can definitely come from the mind of an entrepreneur, but the maintenance and execution of that is just not really in an entrepreneur's personality.
I totally agree. It's very different skill sets, and as an entrepreneur, I'm always looking for the next shiny thing, and maybe not tidying up the opportunity I started before moving on to the next shiny thing.
100%. And for the record, I love the fact that you've done that. I mean, that's a huge part of why we exist as a business, as an ecosystem. What we're doing is, how do we get more founders to get to that point where they build an amazing core business, get someone else to essentially run the operations of it for them. They can then focus on growth or focus on new business and new shiny things, like you said. So epic that you've been able to do that. But that's enough. I'm going to talk about that before we get back there. Let's get back to how you scaled Airvantage. And there's a curiosity that I had in my mind now. I'm just thinking about distribution, right? So obviously, like, I think the value prop is so straightforward to the end consumer that once you've plugged it into the product offering and suite of the M&O, it's more just around acquiring the M&O. But I think the curiosity that I have is it's around something like this. Surely you must have a large proportion of the market, even internationally, of those M&Os that you're still trying to acquire as customers. I'm sure many of them are trying to do this themselves. But what are the objections? What are they hesitating with? How is this not the most obvious thing for anyone to buy from you, and why can't they do it themselves?
So I think, I love to say we have a large portion of them. It's a very big market, and we have a now sized the market, but there are a lot of players in the space. If you look internet, this is the number one performing prepaid value-added service globally across any mobile operator, and this would be the number one performing service. So that's
Even more reason to do it themselves.
Yeah, it is more reason, and it's very competitive, not just in terms of your competitors, but the mobile operators themselves who want to do it.
Sure.
And the reality, our sales pitches, and we've taken over customers from competitors, and we've outperformed those customers. We've even gone into certain customers that we compete head on directly in that customer. We split the base, we go head on, and we outperform and we win the base. So we're very comfortable on that fact. And then when it comes to the mobile operators themselves, this is not their core business. So it's all very well to say like it's so lucrative that they should be doing it themselves. As their focus isn't on terms of profiling customers and understanding end to end. It's this is all we do. So we know exactly how we want to do it. We focus all our attention on it. We know how to drive the metrics. We know how to implement the service. We know how to market to the customers. We know how to profile and take risk on different cohorts. And for a mobile operator to try and build out all that experience and it's more wasteful for them because, we'll go and we've taken mobile operators, they're doing themselves, and we've seen a 300% increase in performance because they're too scared to take the risk. So you've got to be willing to, from an operator's perspective, you could say it makes sense for them to do it, but clearly in experience, they've got other things to focus on. Their business is focusing on rolling out network infrastructure and putting SIM cards distribution into devices and making sure that they have recharge outlets. This is something that is key to their business, but I don't think it's something they want to actually try and build a whole team around and a whole specialist skill and a whole experience is what drives it.
Sure, got you. Essentially, it's the better bang for buck is we can either go and build out our entire ecosystem versus this is we can outsource this to someone and it improves our profit margin really nicely and our profitability with relatively minimal effort, and we get a share on the transaction fee.
We take our transaction fees actually rather small compared to what they're getting, and we're covering all the costs out of our share of the transaction fee. And it's not just in terms of increasing the average revenue per user, but also you increase the customer loyalty. So if you've got a customer who knows that they can get an advance of 100, 200 Rand on their mobile SIM card, it's less likely they'll churn because they value that. It's almost like when you have a credit card, even if you don't use that credit card or spend that credit card, you always like knowing that you've got an available facility on that credit card, and you'll always make sure you keep that bank account. You won't switch bank accounts because the next bank account will only give you a much smaller limit. So there's a value attributed to that.
Okay. So before I go start being an M&O, just so I can have an excuse to buy from you because that value prop and sales pitch is just so well oiled. I want to transition now in terms of what you've been able to, what you're sitting on, right? Because you've got an absolute gold mine there from a data perspective and a KYC data perspective. And really understanding credit scoring these people, these profiles that you have en masse, the fact that you can stratify this according to geography, region, like there's just so many different ways that you can play with this data. And an amazing concept or principle that you brought up with me when we were chatting offline before this is just around play where the market's going, not where the cash currently is right now, and look at that. So I think with that principle in mind, how have you built out other products in order to utilize the data that you're having? And where's your view around where this is going and how you can really unlock all that data that you have worldwide?
So the business started purely on airtime in terms of providing you a balance into your wallet, airtime balance into your wallet. And that's really where I'd still say the majority of the business resides. But, as technology moves forward, there's new products and new segments you need to move into. Like now we do data. So we do data loans, and we also do mobile money loans. And mobile money is penetrating across many markets, and maybe not so strongly in South Africa, but many African markets, South American markets, Asian markets. So now we can extend actual cash onto your wallet. There's a higher risk because it's larger amounts and longer repayment times. But definitely the volume is moving towards mobile money. I think the big drive now is to handsets, because I think it's all tied into the same type of ecosystem that you digitally active, using airtime, using data, using your mobile money wallets to digital transactions. And now we're actually providing customers with handsets. So we've broadened our offering but using the same expertise we have in terms of, understanding the customer base, understanding how to market that customer base, how to take risk on that customer base, but now of larger amounts. And it's actually, even though they're larger amounts, it's much lower margin for us because the volume isn't there yet, but it's moving in that direction. So we've positioned ourselves to be leaders in that space as well, and using all our skills in terms of the understanding from the root up, which is from the airtime, small transactions. Because if you can start doing transactions of, say, loans of 10, 20, 50 rand, you can slowly progress yourself up the value chain, start doing now loans of 2,000, 3,000 rand, and putting a device in a person's hand that makes them a digitally active individual. That it opens a horizon them. A lot of you look at Africa at the moment. A lot of people are still on feature phones. They don't have access to YouTube or to Facebook or to WhatsApp because they're using old legacy devices. So we can now give them a new device over a longer period of time in terms of high value and longer period of time. But that person can become a much more digitally active person of the economy. It opens up doors for them. It's the way to the future is really to be able to access the digital world.
Yeah, 100%. But it also just sounds like, again, across all of these different offerings and stacks that an MNO or a telco can really provide, is like there's just so much that you're able to do with that customer and being able to unlock essentially buy now, pay later, right? For across the entire value chain of what they have to offer. So what I'm curious now, though, is where does that data sit and who owns it? Because with that kind of alternative credit scoring, I imagine there's so much that can be done with that information for all kinds of other financial service industries. Is that something that's possible, or are you kind of restricted because that data is owned by the MNO that you have as a client?
So the data is owned by the MNO, and we are. But I think what we're doing is, many markets there aren't traditional credit bureaus. There isn't any way to actually really build a credit profile on an individual, even though that individual is a very creditworthy person. I mean, if you look at all these markets, they have mobile money agents. So these agents are transacting in terms of actually running businesses, but they actually have no access to credit. So we don't just do consumers; we also do the agent networks. So those agents are doing day-to-day transactions. There's no credit bureau that will lend their money, but we can profile them based on transaction history and their mobile money, and we can give them loans to actually for business purposes and for business sakes. So I mean, that's I think it's, when you say what can you do with the data, I mean it does belong to the mobile operator, but we are building a credit profile with customer where there was no credit profile before. It's the benefit of the customer and the operator. Because it allows, if you look at an environment where they've got their mobile money agents doing transactions, if that mobile money runs out of what we call float on their wallet, they can't do airtime sales, they can't do data sales, they can't do mobile money transactions. And you now basically provide credit into that environment. It just benefits everyone. So the mobile operator is the mobile operator's data, but we will partner with them to make sure that we can drive positive outcomes for both them and ourselves.
I mean, I find that so interesting because it's like, I can see the identity evolving of Airvantage. I mean, where previously it's like we're talking predominantly airtime advances. Now you are an alternative credit provider to anyone within this like MNO ecosystem, right? So obviously the consumers, but then like you said, it's the mobile money agents as well. And I just think that's really cool.
I think, for an economy to really grow, you actually need credit in the ecosystem. And if there's no ways to build those credit profiles, it's almost like you've got someone who's deserving of a loan to actually, for multiple reasons, and they can't get access to it. They can never really get into the value chain, and they can never really, once you start giving someone a device, you can see that they're actually repaying on time for the device. Then it's a multitude of different products you can service them with in terms of where they were unable to access any credit, you can now start saying, well, here's a bank card. So that is the value chain. We're moving in that direction, and it's definitely the ultimate goal. We want to build credit profiles. We want to build financial identities of the individuals who don't have financial identities, that they can become creditworthy, they can become economically active and access to finance to build businesses. And it's actually, what's very interesting is actually the World Bank and the IMF, we work closely with them in terms of our, identifying markets and trying to work in ways to unlock their funding so we can drive this, liquidity into the market.
Yeah, I mean, so just the general topics of both digital and financial inclusion are such huge like problems in order for us to solve on this continent if we're really wanting to have real meaningful growth in our economy as a continent in each geography. And I think it's like that seems like where the vision has evolved for you. So like now that we're really in this innovative phase of the conversation, completely got off the topics and I will come back, I promise. But like let's chat here. What's your blue sky? What's your vision for where you can take this? Because I think where you've been able to position yourself and the kind of the data, the ecosystem, the relationships, the networks that you've been able to build as a business, like the fact that you even say you're working with the World Bank and IMF now, right? It's the possibilities are endless in terms of how you could really shape financial and digital inclusion in the country. Again, what I'm sitting on here is just probably one of the biggest barriers to do that is how is it that you essentially progress this credit score from within the ecosystem of the M&O into other industries at the same time? Firstly, is that assumption correct? Before we start doing the blue sky stuff.
Yeah, I think the assumption is if we can get a smartphone into the hands of every single person on the continent, it will make a huge difference in terms of driving digital inclusion. And if we can do that also at the same time building a financial identity, then you've got a person who's now digitally active with a financial identity so you can access credit to actually start a business. So I think that is really the drive is the more devices and more profiling we can do, the better on a whole for the whole continent. And I mean, the device opens up a world in terms of so much possibility. I mean, devices open up education to those who never had education before. And there's even there's opportunities we're looking at. We're trying to have conversations with the Department of Education and saying, let's try to get a smartphone into every single teacher's hands, and then basically and then perhaps even allow that teacher to upskill and earn incentives on the basis of actually reducing the cost of their digital connectivity themselves. So there's a lot of positive habit building you can do with the device, and a lot of good you can be done if it's done correctly. So it's and I think Africa as a whole. I mean, Africa's leapfrogged in terms of technology. I mean, back in the day when we first started mobile, we were the leaders in terms of mobile. We were the leaders in terms of M-Pesa. We were the leaders in terms of mobile money transactions. So you could do anything on your device. You could do banking via USSD. And since the smartphone came out in the US and the iPhone, unfortunately, we've now still sitting on feature phones, and have actually fallen back from being the leaders in using mobile for transactions and being leaders in mobile to education. We're now at the back because we don't have the devices. And I think this is a way to actually get the devices into everybody's hands, which is critical to really drive what everyone likes to call the industrial revolution.
Yeah, and also one thing I love about Africa, and I think it was Tim McQuire that explained it very simply, is that in developed economies, innovations tends to happen a bit more linearly, maybe exponentially, but it's like you can see the curve. Whilst in Africa, it's like steps. Like we'll carry on with the same technology for a while, get to a certain point, then everyone changes to this and then moves forward. So it's the ability for us that although we'll fall behind now, the moment that we catch up, we don't have the problem that a lot of other economies are going to have is dealing with all this legacy technology and infrastructure. Because and my favorite example for this is probably Kenya, and essentially their transition towards a lot of renewable energy, and their focus on that is meaning that now with this as an advancement and a shift in policy, view on startup and what they're just doing as a government policy towards really building their nation with small businesses and a bit more of a climate-centric view, they're now able to build infrastructure that's lasting into the future instead of how do we shift like so much legacy infrastructure into something that's a bit more modern now. They can actually start like leaning into it and starting to guide the picture, which is what I want to see more of Africa doing.
Well, I think that the biggest block is affordability. Is that people can't afford high-end devices, and they can't afford it, and they can't get any credit to actually purchase a high-end device. And this is what's going to open that blockage. Is that a person can now, instead of spending say $50 or $30 on a feature phone where he won't have access to internet, he can put a $30 deposit down on a high-end device, a 4G, 5G device. And he can now stream YouTube. He can upskill himself. He can get onto WhatsApp. He can download business applications. He can get online banking, and that's really that's a major problem. It's not just if you look at Google now. Google is actually their main priority now is to actually drive this adoption of handsets on on rentals or handsets on finance throughout Africa, because they're seeing the digital inclusion, they're seeing the drive in the economy on the back of that.
I just want to pause in our story that we're having right now, just to tell you a bit more about why we're doing this podcast in the first place. Why did we start the Founder Files? So obviously by day, I mean, I have a business that I need to run. The Founder Files is not yet at the point of being its own profitable business. I'm not exactly Stephen Bartlett. But the point of the reason why we're doing the Founder Files is that when it comes to being an entrepreneur, right, if we want advice, we'll pay for it. Or tell me how you did it, and I'll cherry pick those lessons and apply them with my own business. So obviously the experience shares, getting those lessons from other founders, is why we do this podcast and why you probably come and listen to this podcast. How can we take this wisdom from other founders and how can I apply it to my business? And the whole point of the Founder Files is to give established entrepreneurs like you practical stories and insights from people that have been there before, so you can avoid years of trial and error in scaling your own business. That's the entire philosophy of what we do and why we do it. Now, this links to the greater philosophy of Metavolve. And Metavolve is, our purpose is to accelerate the time it takes to build a great sustainable business. Our mission is to ensure that as many entrepreneurs as possible can take a holiday where they actually switch off whilst their business keeps growing. And our vision is to create a world in reality where more SMEs are able to thrive independently of the founders that started it, by transforming how businesses use strategy to scale. So that's us in a nutshell. This is our philosophy and where it's aligned, because we really are promoting that vision of creating amazing businesses that aren't dependent on the founders, because we want to create a world where not only there are more amazing and successful entrepreneurs that build great businesses, but they're also present parents, they are present with their friends, and they're just healthy human beings that have the time and the capacity to really just live a balanced life. And for me, and for us at Metavolve, this is exactly why we do what we do, because we're trying to create not only healthy businesses, but healthy entrepreneurs, right? And if this is something that resonates with you and something that you are in pursuit of having a healthier balance between your business and your life, then reach out to us. This is exactly what we do. Let's have a conversation to ensure that you have got a bit more sustainable balance in your life and your business. That's it about Metavolve for now. Let's get back into the practical stories and insights. So Mark, I mean, what I'm getting really excited by you and just this entire conversation is just that the scope of your thinking is you're no longer thinking customer, you're no longer thinking market, you're no longer thinking industry. You're actually thinking like continental economy and societal level, which I think a lot of people one don't necessarily have the motivation nor the capability to really handle that level of complexity, but you seem to be swimming and thriving within this ocean. And I think especially exciting now is like you're working with these intergovernmental organizations like the World Bank, like the IMF, whoever else it might be. I can just imagine a situation where hypothetically, because of the information that you have of wanting to really uplift these economies and uplift digital inclusion, is that there's specific people that we know that are, according to certain professions, like a school teacher, and we know that they're still using a feature phone. So why don't we use Airvantage's data, participate with this telco that's operating in that space, and subsidize them getting that smartphone, which then just benefits everyone in the ecosystem and helps get more people into the digital economy. Is that a conversation that's happening, or is this just an idea that I'm smoking socks?
No, so it is a conversation that's happening. I mean, there's a nonprofit I'm involved in called eCube Initiative, and what the eCubes Initiative is, it's a joint venture with the Department of Education in South Africa, and the primary purpose was set up by a good friend of mine, Teddy Blatcher, was to try and drive entrepreneurship in the curriculum. So the purpose was to drive a project-based learning and entrepreneurship in the curriculum. And then I joined a few years ago in terms of looking at it as what can we do in the tech space. And during COVID, we realized there was an urgent need to launch a COVID checker for the Department of Education. They needed to be able to check the teachers needed to check their symptoms before going into the school, and we needed to collate what was happening in the schools in terms of COVID outbreaks. So we launched a WhatsApp bot called the Teacher Connect bot. So it was really a WhatsApp channel for the teachers to connect and to discuss what was happening, and for the Department of Education to be able to communicate with those teachers and get responses back from those teachers. And we rolled it out, just as the school started opening during the COVID period. And now that's become the de facto Department of Education's chatbot to all their teachers. So they've got 1 million onboarded users on that chatbot. A lot of them, a majority of them being teachers. We're also having teachers' assistants and also having learners on that chatbot. And what we're seeing is we've now created a zero-rated LMS. So basically, we've got a whole range of modules. The teachers can now go on board and they can learn and upskill themselves in terms of what's the best way to incorporate project-based learning into the curriculum. What's the best way to create teacher guides and learning sessions for the learners. And the teachers that have engaged with the platform, we've seen a 10% increase in learner outcome because we also track back to the actual learners in those classrooms. But what we actually
Something that NGOs really struggle to do is actually measure impact.
they've managed to, because they actually have access to the Department of Education's results as well. So they can see the teacher cohorts and they can see the learner results. They actually have been able to figure there's been an increase in learner outcome from teachers engaging. But unfortunately, driving teacher engagement is not an easy job because the teachers, there's no way that the Department of Education can actually, they're not allowed to do performance evaluations, performance appraisals. It's against what it's not accepted. So if we can find a way to sort of drive teacher engagement, provide them with a device on the basis that if they engage with the platform, they get discounts on the device, they get discounts on data, they get discounts on airtime, and maybe potentially discounts from retailers, from everyone in the value chain, so we can support the teachers. So we get the teachers actually, driving the right outcomes and incentivizing them to do that. But that will then go down to the 13 million learners in the Department of Education schools. And I mean, not to be able to, every single teacher should have a high-end device, and every single teacher should be learning on that device and taking those learnings back into the schools and passing those learnings back onto the learners. And hopefully even the learners, the next stage would be to roll something out, not to the primary school, but high school kids should also have access to the device. They should have access to the latest content. There should also be some sort of incentives for them to actually try and, improve their outcome. I think, unfortunately, one problem in this country is that we really need to find a way to improve the outcomes coming from the schools. I mean, I know that there's a big drive and there's a lot of effort, but the way to do it is through digital devices.
I mean, that's incredibly inspiring, and also just the visionary aspect of that, because I'm just thinking around just the concept of employee engagement, like the psychological construct of engagement, and just how many of one's needs need to be met for me to feel like I can fully be absorbed and thrive within my work, be fully attentive, derive a lot of meaning for this. I mean, just the principle of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is like there's a lot of other stuff I need to deal with and a lot of stresses I need to deal with before I can really turn my job into a vocation, right, and a passion and a career. And I think especially for people that are school teachers in not just South Africa, but emerging economies in general, there's a whole lot that needs to be done there. But I also just love the opportunity that unlocks by firstly getting people like digitally and financially included, right? Getting them into, once they are participating there, to then collaborate with all these organizations that are potentially willing to subsidize, contribute either out of CSI budget directly from a corporate perspective, government subsidies that helps address these needs. It can all really filter at a grassroots level of really building and improving our society and economy. And the fact that you see that, the fact that you're doing that, and the fact that you are contributing towards that, I think is amazing. I just imagine that you are sitting there frustrated that you can't get more smartphones into more hands as quickly as you'd like.
Yeah, I think that's a big challenge. It's not just in terms of not just getting devices out there, but also finding ways to almost get the teachers on board those devices and get users using them in the correct manner. I mean, it does feel like handing a device to someone who hasn't had option to actually is life changing. And I think a lot of the teachers also feel that they don't have they aren't supported enough by the Department of Education, because it's hard for the Department of Education to support 500,000 teachers without a digital communication channel. And I think this platform has enabled us to assist a lot of those teachers.
Oh. Well, from a selfish perspective, thank you for this conversation so far. It's not often that I get to stretch my macro level thinking legs and test that part of my cognition, and I've really enjoyed that. But now I guess back to come back to the whole point around Airvantage and your story there, right? So I think the principle that pulled us into this conversation is really where the market's going, right? And that's just naturally how you think, right? It's everything that we've included from the conversation around whether it's credit scoring, whether it's the viewing of this trend of feature phones, the smartphones needing to do that, the barriers towards doing that, the example that you've given towards school teachers and how that can progress. And it's all really plugging on this like logical process of consequential thinking back down to what does this piece of information that we're sitting on, if utilized, what else can we unlock? And I can just see ripple effects going on from there. But this isn't the only place in your business that you apply this thinking. So can you give me some examples in your scaling journey where you've really thought, where you found it incredibly useful to think more, as we said, where skate where the puck is going rather than where it is now? How else have you applied that principle in business?
I think it's always hard to sort of like you often want to go where the money is, where you can see that here's the current opportunity, here is the money being generated. But the problem is that by the time you get there, it's moved elsewhere. And even in our current business Airvantage, where we would have, if we were just to focus on only on airtime advance, we surely would have a more profitable business today, because it is really where the money is. Um, but it's definitely everything's moving towards more data and actual not using your airtime as currency, but actually having currency as currency and having device. So you almost need to disrupt yourself and say, we have to take a step, and we have to distract ourselves from our core business to focus where the business will be in the future. Because we don't do that, by the time when the future comes along, we won't have a business anymore. Even though it's great today, and it's a great place to be today, is that in 10 years' time, we'll look back and we'll say, actually, there is no airtime. Airtime no longer exists. The only thing that actually exists is the device and mobile money. And maybe, and we're not in that position. We're not that space. So it does take a lot of effort. It takes almost like, instead of trying to, get your existing core team to focus on distracting themselves, you almost need to have like a separate path or separate group of people saying, okay, we're going to let our core team focus on the core business, but we're going to have a little side team trying to start a new business on the side. And we're not going to be totally on the side, because we're going to have to work closely with the core team, but there's going to be some times when we butt heads and disagree in terms of what the priority should be and how things should be done. And another big complexity that also comes in is that the core team sort of has a very well-defined box. This is how we do it. This is when we bring on a customer, it's very much, it's done A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There's no real, we know it very well. We know how it runs. We know how it gets done. There's no discussion or thinking what needs to be done. But with the new products, it's almost like we've got to test a lot of different things. We're not quite sure. We've got to try different paths, and maybe we go completely down the wrong channel. But we've just got to learn. We've got to learn that that's the only way to really sort of start disrupting yourself, is actually failing at times. To trying new challenges that aren't predefined, isn't a definite outcome if you do X, Y, Z. But we may do something, and it may be completely down the wrong chain, and we can't be upset about those failures. We've got to, you can't point fingers and say, well, she should have done it this way. But it's all very well in hindsight. But when you're trying something new, it's actually quite difficult to actually lay out the plan A to D without going on a complete detour. Yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I love the way that you structured that. But to your point there, there's the difference in definition between a startup and a business. A startup is a temporary organization in search of a scalable business model. A business is, I actually don't know what the definition of a business is, because I think it's just so at the level of assumptions. But it is an entity that exchanges goods and services in exchange for profits, right? I think that is actually the definition of a business. Cool, got there. But the point is, they have two different strategies in order to succeed. If you're a startup, everything that you're focused on is rapid experimentation, rapid learning, like breaking things, putting them down before they're finished. But it's all in search of that scalable business model. You have methodologies and wisdom like the lean startup. You've got the mom test, for example, that applies there. But those aren't useful when you're at a business and you're looking at how do we grow, how do we optimize, how do we attract and retain customers, increase revenues, outperform competitors, achieve superior profitability. Like, it's a very different world and approach to strategy. Now, just with that as a foundation is, I think, where a lot of business owners often go wrong, is that they'll view one business and as all is the same entity, treated the same way. So you'll have a core business, core set of products that's working super well, but then they'll have an idea and opportunity to build a new product into a new market. But essentially, they utilize the same resources, structure, culture, and governance and strategy around how they're building this core business applied to that. And then it does a disservice to both of them at the same time. And
Yeah.
so your point is like, you actually knew exactly this is like, I've got a business here, but the point is like, I want to have a innovation team that can come up with a startup, but we need to remove them from one another. Otherwise, they're just going to cause havoc with one another, right? And the point is, you gave different resources to the disruption side, i.e., your own startup development part of your business, and you separated those completely from the core business in order for you to actually just succeed in doing both.
Yeah, I think you hit on it's. I mean, we couldn't separate totally, but it was really a startup within the business. So we sort of had separate resources doing it, but because there's so much of the core that's aligned, the technical backend is going to be the same team in terms of
Sure.
delivering it. We have brought in different resources for it, but it's exactly how you summed it up. It was a startup. We started up a new whole business within our core business that was aligned in many ways, but very fragmented in other ways. And now we've got into a point where they're actually starting to meet up together, where actually the startup is reaching a point where it's got a scalable business model, and now we're actually putting it into the back end business, which has all the processes and all the rigorous and the systems in place in order to make sure that we scale it and make sure that it's actually run effectively and efficiently, that we don't actually land up building something that's going to fall over, but land up now we've got the pieces now to build the actual scalable model and the team to actually scale it to the right level.
Yeah. Well, what is that business? What is this other startup that's now really at a point of scaling up?
No, so that would be the handset business. I mean, it was a startup, and we've rolled it out. We've reached some scale, and now we're putting it into our core business to actually scale it in terms of actual operational efficiency.
Sorry, when you say handset business, you're talking you manufacture and sell handsets?
No, the device finance.
Oh, device finance. Okay, cool. Sorry, I was about to say, it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's a very like,
No, it's a very
you operate in
different.
the same industry, but this is a totally unrelated play.
So the device finance, device rental business was a startup within effectively Airvantage. We had a lot of the same working pieces. We had a lot of the same profiling, but it was almost it's a very different business when you go into the world of a physical realm, of making sure that you can get a physical device into consumers' hands. And there's a lot of logistics around that in terms of making sure that it's in stock, it's available. If there's a problem, we can do reverse logistics. So it was that was the startup in Airvantage, which now has become its own business, but we've actually now brought in the rest of the business to make sure we scale it.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's also where, if you're ever a software business, is like, that's one thing. If you can get that business right, the amazing part about scalability and profitability is you literally don't have to deal with logistics. And the moment that you're creating anything physical in the real world, you have to deal with logistics, and logistics is very complicated.
Logistics and inventory and device failure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an entirely different ballgame, I guess. But welcome to the fourth industrial revolution. So I want to now segue this into the point of you getting in a CEO for the core business, right? So, but I also specifically want to unpack the timing and the thinking here. So I want to hear the story, but the assumptions that I have in my head is that you grew the core business of Airvantage to a specific point. Either got bored and you wanted to do something new, or you spotted an opportunity to do something new, or you realized maybe I'm getting in this way and I'm starting to disrupt it as well. There's something that happened, and it was a realization, I actually need to go and pursue this idea properly. I need to get out of this business's way, hire a proper CEO and a leadership structure to handle this, but someone that I can also still rely on for this disruptive innovation I'm going to now. And that's predominantly what I focus on. How did the story play out? What was the timing like? How did you make that call?
So I think there was an element. I mean, we were myself and my partner Mark. We co-founded the business together. We were co-CEOs, and we were both running the business. And we were both looking at new opportunities and new areas for growth of the business. And that's almost like a full-time job on its own in terms of focusing on new opportunities. And then what we realized is we had a very strong COO that had been with us for many years, who was actually very good in terms of managing all the details of the business day to day, and an all rounder, but full time focused on that in terms of making sure the business runs from A to Z. And so we thought, instead of us trying to focus on building different elements with different new parts, new opportunities of the business, and try run the day to day operations of the business, let us promote our COO to CEO, because she was effectively running the day to day of the business. And let her take the title and responsibility that goes with it, and let us focus on driving new initiatives in the business. It had been something we've been in for a while, and so we promoted our our COO to CEO, and she really took in the reins and really manages and keeps myself and my co-founder on a tight leash in terms of where we're allocating our resources, where we're putting our time and effort. So we can't just jump from one project to another project. That we need to be structured in terms of putting in detailed business requirements into our development team. And it's been an incredible blessing and also a bit of a challenge, because you also let go of the reins, and now all of a sudden you're not making this. You've got to make the decisions in collaboration and get her approval and buy-in before you make.
You're the founder of this business, was co-CEO, and you've now appointed someone to be your boss.
I wouldn't say boss, because but she is in a sense boss. But I would say that we appointed someone to make sure the business is at a scale where it's running efficiently, and we're not jumping onto projects and derailing the team without actually really, because we found a new shiny object. And so I know we say you think 53 people is a small amount, but when you're talking, most of those are engineers. It's quite a large team, and it's quite a lot of complexity. And I think one thing we've been incredibly fortunate is we've always started the business with the idea of having as a family. Now we're very close. We celebrate birthdays. We have long conversations. Personally, we know each other very well. We know what's going on in each other's lives, and because of that, we've got a very small team, but a very close knit and a very strong team in terms of delivering on projects and all coming together and driving in the same direction. And we've got hardly any staff turnover. I mean, we've actually sometimes staff that actually leave us because they want experience and they come back to us because they realized what they're missing. And actually, we had a breakfast this morning, which is organized by our COO, and we had everyone in the office, even though a lot of people working remotely. And our CEO made a speech. It was a great speech she made, but it was just a joke, but it was quite a relevant joke to our new candidates, our new internships, that they've been very lucky to find this as their first job, because it's really a place where we care for each other and we take responsibility. We try to build relationships, and we make sure that all our staff are very happy in their environments.
Awesome. I definitely want to put a pin in that, because I want to go a little bit deeper in terms of how you built such an amazing culture, because I think that's always, it's crucial. You can't build a business without people, and to have people that really love being there. You're going to be able to go so much further with them. Going back to the point of appointing a CEO, I love the story that you've said there, because I just imagine I'm thinking about the kind of person that would be a perfect fit for COO role. Massive attention to detail, super conscientious, hates waste, loves efficiency, likes things being in the right place at the right time. And like, to have someone when you've got a really established business with proper playbooks around sales and growth, and especially for operations and client delivery and client interface, that's someone that is excellent to essentially put in that role, because it's just running and they get a kick out of it. I think what I'm curious to know now is how does the structuring of the business work, right? Is it now like the one that you mentioned around the mobile devices, the financing for that? Is that a separately registered company? Is this a separate business unit or in P&L within the same company? And then how are you viewing the leadership structure as it is now? So have you got CEO of business unit 1 versus you and Mike as like co-CEOs of business unit 2? How do you manage your own? We get into board conversations and managing across that. But the moment you go from single business to multi-business unit business, complexity changes in how you govern it.
Yeah, so we do. We did set up a separate company, but it is still almost joined as one. And we actually went and hired. I sort of took on the interim role in terms of sort of like heading up the new business in terms of building out the product, identifying the customers, rolling out the POCs. And then we went and hired someone who had to be the head of that specific business unit, to focus on that as a sole focus. And we do have, I wouldn't say dedicated, but we have resources that are focused on that particular business, but interfacing with our whole core team, because at the back end everything is aligned. We're using all the same back end systems and all the project management, the BAs, because it's a well-oiled machine. It's almost like is a separate business, but as a division of our core business, but with a real separate focus.
No, that makes sense, because it's also it's a very related market. So a lot of the skills, the capabilities, operations, infrastructure, everything that you've really built, essentially gets repurposed there. It can be the same the same product in the back end, if you will, but it's the customer interface, the markets, and the approach towards selling that fundamentally changes. So again, I'm curious to know. Let's go a little bit deeper because again, I can intuit a lot of this given my organizational design background. But just around how is it that you're managing the structure of this from a leadership perspective, keeping things so well oiled, keeping such a positive culture, and essentially how you're managing what is now basically a shared services function between these two business units. You have to manage your product roadmap, your feature development, etc. How are you handling this new stage now of managing two businesses in one with shared resources?
Yeah, I mean, it does have lots of complexities, but we sort of prioritize what we think are the key elements of both the businesses in terms of what we want to drive. And there is a fight for resource and focus. But I think what we've identified is that there's that the opportunity is big enough that we've started building up its own, say, resource space to actually drive its own initiatives and to focus on it. So it's I can't give you the answer because it's not an easy answer to give it. When there's sort of two competing divisions looking for focus and attention, and everyone has different sort of like objectives. It's hard to get everyone to pull in the same directions. There's lots of heated discussions in terms of how we should be doing something and how we should be focusing our attention. But I think in the end, we all realize it's such an important vertical that it's worth it. They're worth the investment in saying, placing our focus elsewhere. And it's intertwined in terms of now when we're working with mobile operators, it's something they want to see part of their roadmap, is that they realize how important it is for them. So having it as part of our offering, that when we're actually selling to new customers, is that we have a chain. We start with airtime, which they move to data, we move to handsets, because they want all of it. If we were only in one vertical, we wouldn't fulfill the full stack. So but not just ourselves, but our customers realize the importance of it, and managing the resources to focus and deliver on it is a challenge. It's not something there's no real easy answer to give on it.
What I'm curious to know now is I want to go back to the culture question, because especially with the complexity that you have now in this org design, the fact that you've got competing priorities, you have lots of internal conflict within the business. Would I say that is a good thing? If anyone's read 5 dysfunctions of a team, and if you're not having a healthy conflict within the business, then there's definitely dysfunctions happening. So, I mean, the fact that you are having these disagreements around really where priorities are, where resources are, I think is fantastic. Talk to me about the culture, right? How is it that you manage, how you build this, and what are some of the mistakes you've made in this part specifically of going from single business unit to multi-business unit business with a shift in leadership at the same time? Actually, sorry, I'm going to take all of that back because those are there's 3 complex questions that I put into one there. I'm going to start one thing at a time. I'm actually going to ask the question around, what were some of the mistakes or school fees that you've paid and that you've learned in this process of transitioning leadership and appointing a full-time CEO on the one side, starting off another business unit, hiring a team to be able to lead that, and then also without disrupting your culture too much at the same time? What are the school fees you had to pay and learnings that you got in that process?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, I suppose, learning to let go. So I think in terms of when you're actually hiring a CEO to run the business, or you want to appoint someone as CEO, you almost need to let go of the responsibilities and stop trying to micromanage a lot of the components. And it's hard sometimes to do that because you feel like you want to be in all the calls and all the discussions, but actually you shouldn't be there. And I think it's also, you've got to let someone, once they take responsibility, you've got to show that you trust them, that they're going to deliver, and let them be there and not question their decisions. I mean, have the discussions, and I think there's always debate is always good, because as long as everyone's debating for the right purpose of the business, then hopefully the outcome is the best. And one of the things we actually did is we put together a strong exco. So we have a exco I think of 6 of us, and we sit down and we have a conversation every month in terms of every single week, in terms of where we're going and what's going on across all the different departments and where the priorities and where's the focus. And everyone gets to contribute, and it's an open forum. There's no, it's almost a decision-making process for all of us. And that really gives us an opportunity to collaborate in a positive way as opposed to a negative way in terms of the group. And so I think there was the lessons learned, was to let go into just to found an open forum where you can have an open debate without really coming out that it's a healthy debate, not a conflicted debate. In terms of appointing a CEO.
Okay, so before getting back to the culture question, the curiosity that I have there around essentially managing changes in the business, I'm very curious about that weekly session, right? How do you structure that? What's the agenda? How do you manage that? Is there like a scorecard involved? Are there typical topics how do you run that meeting? Run me through that.
I think it's actually quite unstructured. It's almost just everyone just raises what they want to talk about based on what's happening in the past week or the current week. What are the current things? It's really whatever is the priority right there to discuss. We discuss it, and obviously we
give me an example.
So for example, we're busy with a large deployment in South Africa, and there's a lot of moving parts. There's been a lot of complexity to get it up and going. And the first thing is we start discussing, okay, what are the roadblocks? How do we manage this? Who's going to do what? What do we need to do? How are we going to allocate resources? How do we, what are we going to do to sort of drive? This is the priority right now. How can we all contribute to make sure this goes in the right direction? And because those decisions will be made that day, decisions need to be made, and it's important to get the input of everyone on the team in terms of what are the right decisions to be made. How does everyone feel about pushing in a certain direction? Is it the right way to push in that direction, or should we rather take a step back? So we don't really have it's almost like we're just having that placeholder that we can talk about the immediate priorities in the business and how we all think about it and how we can all contribute and how we're going to deal towards it.
Okay, so it's more like the intention is we have a monthly placeholder that whenever there is something that needs to be discussed or a decision that needs to be made, that I know I want the contribution, the insight from leadership, I know immediately that's a topic that I just pencil down and we're going to discuss it then.
It's actually weekly, and it's a placeholder, so we know that if there's something that is, so we have it weekly on a Monday, so we know on the Monday if there's something we need to discuss, it gets raised immediately, and so we can then jointly decide what needs to be done for that week.
Okay, cool. Awesome, yeah, because I mean, we're a business of 3 people currently, and I would do the same thing. We follow it through. It's like each person's got their own responsibilities. What is that we need to do? What do we need to unlock? It's just great to see that that's still running as a principle there. I mean, given the size, it seems 53 people, there isn't really, is there much of a middle management layer there? Are there team leaders? Because you said exco of 6 people, what does the middle management layer look like? And how does this philosophy of weekly, very agile, collaborative decision-making kind of cascade into the next round?
Yeah, so we have team leads in every single department. And I think also what we do is before our, say, weekly get-together, we actually have a meeting with the project leads to say what's happening in all the projects. And we go through every single project where we are in terms of whether it's a new deployment or whether it's an existing deployment and an upgrade. And we discuss what's happening in those projects, what are the roadblocks. We try to keep it very short, but give us a high level in terms of what do we deliver in the previous week? What steps do we take forward in terms of the current projects we deliver in the previous week? And then where will it put us in terms of the upcoming week? I mean, I know it's, if you look at it now, we may actually say that it may be a bit too micromanaged, too much in the detail. But I think when you're dealing with important projects, it's nice to know, to get a sense from the team, what are the frustrations on those particular projects. So in those updates before our exco, we get a sense of the people who are leading those teams, what's going on in those projects, what their frustrations are, and what they need help with as well. And then we can bring it into our exco and say, okay, this is the problems we're having in these particular projects. What is the decision we're making collaboratively needs to be done, and who's going to do what to achieve it? And then we almost start the week on the basis, okay, now we need to deliver on X, Y, Z by the end of the week. So come Monday for the update, we've made some progress.
Yeah, I can only imagine the pace you must be able to operate with that, because I mean that's must be just so quick. I mean, just the decision making, just for me to summarize that, because I really enjoy that, is like Monday morning, checking on a project, where are we at, on track, off track, where are some roadblocks, what are some things that we need to unlock? Cool. Unless it's something that can really be made a decision there in the moment, it's like, cool, definitely penciled this in, we're going to discuss this a bit later. how do we just solve this as a business and address that? Because, this project's actually been off track the past 2 weeks. And we need to actually, and these ones are fine in a healthy stage. How do we reprioritize accordingly? And that's really epic. What it begs the question for me though is like one thing I got from Nick, one of our shareholders and a mentor of mine, is the short term almost always wins out over the long term, right? So from there it's like I think the execution management that you have there is incredible. For the record, I'm not accusing you of what he said. It's just as a principle that's often mentioned, and it's so good to have that incredibly agile level of execution. What about strategy? What about when do you create the time and structure towards thinking this is where we want to be in a couple of years? This is what we're going to break down and achieve this year. This is what we're doing a quarter. Do you have a different format and structure for that? How do you essentially tackle the approach towards managing operations as closely as you do, but still keeping an eye on the bigger picture? As I know that you'd like to think, given the conversation we've had till now.
Yeah, I suppose Nick was correct. You land up focusing on the short term to the detriment of the long term. And we keep on saying we need to have we've had we almost come together off-site as a executive team together and discuss where we're going as a business. And that's not as frequently, but we have it say once every 6 months, we sit down as a team and say, let's look at the business now where we are and where we need to go. And let's look at the objectives and what are the big long-term objectives in terms of the business? How do we want to reshape the business? How do we want to restructure the business? What opportunities we want to go after? What markets do we want to go after? And we have a bit of a strategy session there. We put something down on actually our CEO made us do this. Last year was actually write down on a piece of paper what we were doing in the handset finance opportunity, and everybody signed it. So now we're all aligned. That's not to say it won't change, but now we've got a long-term strategy where what we want to achieve, and that's what we're going to drive to. And we're going to hopefully take some iterative steps along the journey to get there. Along our weekly meetings, but have a long-term goal we're actually focusing to achieve in the long run. But I do think I think Nick was right, is actually we should be spending more time on the long-term objectives and maybe a little bit less time on just focusing on the weekly priorities, because the weekly the urgent items are often not someone told me once, actually my cousin says you should focus on the important items, not the urgent items.
Well, I mean, yeah, so that's, do you know the Eisenhower matrix?
I think it sounds familiar.
It's the quadrant of important and urgent. So it basically, if I had to do a square here, if we've got not important, not urgent and urgent, actually, let me do it the other way. Not urgent and urgent, important, not important. This block here, which is important and urgent, that's a crisis, right? You're dealing with that right now.
Yeah.
This quadrant here that is important but not urgent, that is strategic and needs to be prioritized. Because if it's not prioritized, you're always going to kick things off for what's urgent. The stuff that's urgent but not important is just the treadmill work, right? That's just spending unnecessary time on more like administrative tasks, and it's just busy. Like every adult says, I'm just so busy all the time. But are you actually and that's where you can get off on being as efficient as you like, but you're just not being effective. You're not working on the main things. And then the stuff anything else that is not important, not urgent, you should actually just not be doing.
Yeah. I think that's actually one of the biggest points. I think you can sit down at my desk and I make a list of what needs to be done, and then I get into my emails, and you almost land up in a position it's just the more emails you respond to. I mean, even though you're just responding because they're in your inbox and they're not urgent and they're not important, but as you respond to it, just creates more responses. So by the end of the day, you've actually spent the whole day responding to emails that 90% of them aren't important, but you've actually landed up having more, you've accumulated more emails. And I find that very frustrating. I don't know how. It's one of the things I want to try to work on. It's almost like exactly what you said. Like, don't even look at this. The emails that are not important shouldn't be coming into my inbox, but a lot of unimportant emails come into my inbox, and for some reason I choose to read them, and for some totally lodges, I often respond to them, and that just creates more wasted time or more wasted energy.
Yeah, I have to say that's one thing I think I do really well that I've learned over time, and I think it's just the nature of a business model where my attention and time is what it is that we sell. I mean, we've tried our damnedest to get away from a time and materials business model, and we're close, but if you chip away at it, it still is time and materials, or it's cost plus in a sense. But the point there is because of that's the nature of the business. How I use my time and attention is very good. So naturally our ability to have clear priorities and deep work sessions and slots is like, I mean, I'm using my phone as a camera right now, which is helpful because it's on airplane mode and I cannot be disturbed at all. But the majority of my day, my phone is on do not disturb. I'm not checking my email. I've structured like, this is my plan. This is what I need to be working on. This is what I need to be concentrating on. And it'll often happen where, and I've still got life that I need to live at the end of the day. So what happens is I get this accumulation of emails and WhatsApps, and I'll obviously check them periodically and be like, what is that needs to be looked at and doesn't. And then it's not like an urgency now, and I will let them accumulate until I actually have a proper slot where I can either while I'm going for a walk or taking myself up for breakfast or just have the time, and then just go and catch up with all of them, get them out the way, and then let them reaccumulate. And I feel like I've developed a good habit for that. What I'm still working on is the emotional guilt and sense of urgency that I have knowing that I've got all that stuff in the back of my head. So that's the next step for me to solve. But I think from a focusing on important things first, I think I've got done pretty well.
That's a great job. I struggle to sometimes go to bed without checking every single email has been read, even though I'm not going to be able to get to it, but just I can see that I've read it to make sure there's nothing urgent that I forgot to respond to.
Yeah, no, I think for me, it's helpful is the fact that it's like there's just certain names and people that it's like if I receive an email for them, it's like that's attention right now versus anything else can wait. But it's also easy for me to say that given the fact that the complexity of my business is still very low right now. I think when I get to the point of having a 53-person company that is operating constantly in 14 countries, I might think about this very differently. But let's see. But either way, we've just advocated more about the benefits of having an executive assistant that can mow through our communications and emails and almost hopefully make those decisions for us on what actually requires our attention and what doesn't. So I want to take a step back and go back to what we're talking about culture there. I mean, the fact that you've got one where, everyone loves being at, they don't know what they've got till they're gone and then they want to come back. Your attrition rates and employee turnover is so low. But then also the fact that you've been able to transition leadership so smoothly, have such good conversations with your CEO, navigate the power dynamics involved in that, and then just have such a strong culture with people that are so clearly so productive to the point where you're just like an efficient machine around your problem solving and execution on a weekly basis. Yeah, how have you gone about developing your culture that has made you really attractive for people to work at?
So I think it all starts with having the right people. So if you've got the right people with the right attitude to start with, it really, I mean, it's I think there was some study that basically the moment you bring in a B team player, it brings down the average of everybody. So if we have when it comes to culture, I think we have all A team players. Everyone's aligned in terms of that. It's we don't just see ourselves as a place to work. We see ourselves as a family, and important to make sure that everyone is everyone's doing well from a personal perspective. How are they doing it at home? Are there any issues they're experiencing at home? Are there any issues they're experiencing in their personal life besides the work environment? And that it's and making sure we recognize everybody. Everyone's recognized in terms of their achievements. Everyone's given some space to actually sort of. So it starts the people and it starts the leadership recognizing that the company is about the people. It's about making sure that the people are aligned in the same vision and also making sure that when we're talking to our staff, we're talking to them about the priorities, the challenges we're facing in the business, and how we have to work together to overcome those challenges. I think one of the conversations we're having now is during COVID, we all went remote, which was for us was great because we started setting up before there was lockdown. We actually said we saw it coming and we said let's get everyone laptops, let's give everyone internet. So when we went remote, we were ready for it. And even during COVID, we went through process. We were having I think a monthly touch base where everyone was coming online and talking about what's happening in their life, what are the issues. We had moments of people sharing personal moments on Zoom calls, people crying. I think during one of our year-end sessions, we actually had a session where everyone got drunk online for the year-end function. We sent everyone bottles of whiskey. And now we're having the conversation, okay, we recognize what was needed during COVID. We recognize we're a hybrid workplace. We're going to select that. But it's important for everyone to see each other in person in the office. We've got we say we'd like you to come in twice a week, but not everyone's coming in twice. But we really want to see people coming into the office and sitting across the table and actually talking to one another, not just about the business problems they're facing, but also about their personal problems they're facing. Because if and we did see this. Actually, some people were sitting at home and it was bad for them. They actually needed the presence, the human touch and the human conversation. And bringing people back into office was important for that. But it's important to foster the culture that we have some sort of in-person meetings, not to force everyone back to office, but you want everyone to want to come back to office anyway. So we do things like we have breakfast, we have joint lunches, we have sessions away. Yeah, I mean, it's really looking at a person who they are, not just the function they fulfill.
I think that for me is the one that summarizes it at the end there, because I up until this point, there was also someone I spoke to record on the podcast as well, is that whenever I hear someone describe their place of work like a family, that's more often than not actually a red flag to me, because often there's like, that's an indication of a toxic work culture. And the reason why is it's because of usually more like parental figures. So like the CEO will be treated like mom or dad, right? And the people, it's like, okay, how can I get mom or dad's favor? And there'll be favoritism. But also at the same time, as you can't choose your family, so you kind of have to just like, if you're having conflict, you have to tolerate them. And so the avoidance of issues for the sake of harmony within a family dynamic gets brushed under the rug, etc. So like it's the fact that it's I don't talk about a healthy family dynamic. It's usually when someone describes we have a family, it's often the founder or CEO, but then you actually ask the employees what it's like to work there, and it's not pleasant. I think for you, it's the other way around, for the simple principle of the fact that it's not around this authoritarian kind of leadership style and hierarchy around the fact that someone's being associated as a parent and everyone is there as a family. It's more about the fact that it's like, I care about you as a human being, and I want you to feel valued as a human being, regardless of the function that you bring to the table. And that's a depth of human to human relationship around actually getting to know you and actually valuing you, which just transcends just being an employee.
Yeah, I definitely think we wore the latter. It's not about an authoritative thing. It's about having the space that everyone can have a discussion and actually be felt to be heard. And if there is any issues in that person's life, we have to discuss and then try and find ways to improve the situation for that individual.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to hear that. So Mark, I guess just to summarize all of your experiences and your knowledge being the director of multiple companies, right? On your second rodeo of being a startup founder in the same company, what are some lessons and experiences that you've had across the board that you'd like to share with me in the audience that you think is useful?
Sure. I think it's always important, and everyone says it's important to find something you're passionate about, because if you can find something you're passionate about, you're going to enjoy going to work every day. So I think to find something that you actually really enjoy and something that you actually you find purpose in it, no matter what that purpose is. I think when it comes to starting business, a friend of mine once told me it's all very well to something that you're passionate about. If you aren't making money, it's very hard to be passionate about something that's so long term. So find something that you really find you're really passionate about, also that you can actually make a commercial endeavor. Unless you want to go into the non-profit space, but that's a whole different ballpark. And I think once you find something you're passionate about, make sure you bring the right people on board to be able to deliver on it. That you actually have the right team working pulling in the right direction, and that it's not. And while there's often there can be a debate, that the debate is always a healthy outcome of the debate. That everyone's always pulling in the right direction, so that people have different views, but in the end of the day, it's for the best interest of the company, not for the best interest of themselves in the business. Another piece of advice I'd say is obviously just make sure you deliver. If you take on a particular job or a particular client, make sure you deliver on that and build a reputation with that customer, because that's what business relationships is about your reputation and your relationship with that individual, and the fact that you deliver on what you said you're going to do. And then, when you're building a company, I think you also want to build it that, you want to try to find a way that you can start with like sort of an MVP that you don't go too overboard in building something that actually is too complex before you launch it. Start with something that you know is going to get the right product fit. When you have the right product fit, like I mentioned to you, when we first started the business, we could have had two options. We could have gone and after we could have gone and hired a team of 20 and started building from ground up, or we could say, let's find someone who's experienced in that specific field and let's outsource a component of our build to them, and then make sure we actually build it correctly. And once we've built it correctly, we know what we do, we can say, okay, let's actually start looking to in-house it and then build everything build our whole engineering team from the ground up, which we were very fortunate to do. And then another thing is you have to also invest in areas that you don't really see the return immediately. Like the one area we invested in from the very beginning, we were very early in the data science, machine learning, is that we set up a team, we started looking at it. We were still working very much on a manual process, and that was driving a lot of our decisioning. But we took about, when we started our investment in our data science, must have been about 6-7 years ago. So the machine learning and data science, we invested in 6-7 years ago, and we built out a team in that area that took a while to find its feet. It took a while to actually understand what needed to be done. We had to spend a lot of time in terms of iterating on different projects and learning different models, but now it's at the core of our decisioning, that we wouldn't be able to making the right decisioning without it. And if we were only investing in that now, it would be behind the curve. So it's almost, you've got to look at, and it goes back to also the device rental. It's hard to take your eye off the ball of your current business, and you've got it hard to invest in things you don't see immediate returns, but you need to do it. Otherwise you will be disrupted and you will be nervous. When someone comes out and all of a sudden that we're only in the airtime lending space and we're only doing manual profiling, and someone comes and goes, well, listen, we've got the full spectrum of products and we do machine learning on every single component. I mean, it becomes very difficult for us to compete, and we will be disrupted. But right now we're staying in a position where we like to see ourselves as the leader of the pack in terms of continuously involving, continuously investing, and continuously trying to be in the clear position that, if we go into a market and we have to compete with a competitor, we're fairly confident we can take them on and we can win, because we've spent the time and money investing in building the foundation to make sure we can outperform our competitors.
Well, and I think the fact that you've also got the proof, like you mentioned earlier, that you've done that repeatedly, and even with your own clients who you're competing internally with them, is like, we're going to beat you as well. So there's a consistent track record of success. Mark, thank you very much for this conversation. It's been incredibly stimulating and engaging. Everything from thinking truly macro philosophically around society to really getting into the nitty-gritty of how one executes on a weekly basis. We've kind of covered all the bases of complexity of leading a business, and I've really loved every moment of this. So I guess just the final way to end this off is, what's the one question that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you that you'd like to answer now?
Sure. I think an interesting question always is why start a company in South Africa, and especially in the tech space? Like right now, South Africa is it's a great market, but I mean, really, if you want to be in the tech space, I think going into the US would obviously hold much more opportunity. And it's maybe a question I've always wondered, I'm based in South Africa and it's been great to be in South Africa, but maybe I should have taken my chances moving abroad and trying things internationally. And I suppose I wonder if I would have been more successful or less successful, because yes, it's a bigger market opportunity, and it's maybe more like, you talk about a valuation of a business in South Africa compared to a valuation of business in Africa. I mean, you can't compare the two. But there's a big element of sort of, working to your skill set in terms of the market that you're in, that you are an expert in your domain, that you have an understanding of this market that other people won't. And even in the area of traveling into Africa, you think going into Africa, it's hard work going into these markets. It's actually tough to travel in. It's tough to set up businesses. It's tough to actually get contracts. It's tough to actually deal with the customer and actually to deliver on a solution. And then often they just change the regulations and you're out of business. So I suppose the question is, can I look back? If you look back, would you have been better off trying to go internationally and build a business, or staying in South Africa? And I think the answer would have been that you have to focus on the decision you've made and the path that you've chosen, and just make sure you do it. You stick to it, and you do a great job in terms of delivering on it. And if things don't go well and things don't actually happen the way that you hope, then maybe you can take another decision and actually change direction. But once things are moving in the right direction and you heading in the right path, then just make sure you stay focused on delivering on that outcome.
I love that. I mean, what a way to end a podcast on entrepreneurship, then, to essentially, if I may summarize that, saying pick a path, commit to it, and so you realize it's the wrong path, and then pivot, and then commit to that one, which is,
Yeah.
yeah. And I love the way that you applied that, because it's not just around business; it's also a good mentality towards life that you clearly have too. So, Mark, thank you for being on the Founder Files. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. It's been an honor and a privilege and a pleasure. I cannot wait to see how Airvantage continues to scale, but also I'm really excited to see what you're able to do for digital and financial inclusion on the continent, because this momentum that you have and the vision that you have is truly inspiring, and I can't wait to see how you contribute to it.
Yeah, and I think thanks, Cameron. It's been a great conversation. I really enjoyed your interpretation, your thoughts, your ideas. It's actually given a lot of input, and it's some pivoting ideas in my head. And I really enjoyed the conversation, and can understand why you'd be also great in terms of business coaching and a great mentor.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, audience. I hope you heard that. I'll see you next time. Cheers.
Great. Cheers, Karen.
Yeah, thanks again to Mark for the shout out there for strategy coaching. Yeah, it's definitely great to be able to do what it is that I do. And it's also because of running this podcast that I've been able to learn so much from founders like Mark. And just after doing 100 episodes of this, and also having worked with over 100 business owners, I mean, there's 200 business owners worth of knowledge experience that I have that I'm able to bring to the table. And I'm really grateful that I get to say that. It means that I've really noticed the difference in the past couple of months in just my ability to spot things, see the common lessons, and see how people just unlock growth and scale. So, yeah, Mark, I know that you're watching and listening to this. Thank you once again. And just to the audience, right? So if you want to tap into some of the knowledge that I've gained in this period in time, anything that I know about strategy, anything I know about organizational psychology, or stuff that I've tapped into around working with the people that I have and interviewing the people that I have, I'm at the point of I'm not even sure I know of what it is that I know. I know what I know, but I also don't know what I know. And if you want to tap into some of that, please reach out to me. Be more than happy to help however I can. If you're in the point of scaling your business and figuring out how it is that you can enjoy some more free time, get a bit of a work-life balance, and have this business truly scale and do what it is that you want with your time, for example, like Mark. And if you want to transition this business to having a CEO and you focusing on the next business venture, I can definitely help with that transition. So thank you very much for listening to another full episode of the Founder Files. Thank you for listening to me talk about and promote myself and my own business once again. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Cheers for now.